Hello, souls and demons, and welcome back. Today's story is written by me, and it's the first story I've ever written, so it may not be the best thing ever, but I wanted to try and share something of my own with all of you. So the title of my story is The Last Peanut Butter Sandwich, or the no-sleep title, which will be We Were Told Never to Eat the Expired Peanut Butter Sandwiches. So sit back and grip your seats and enjoy. 4 hours into my shift at my place of work, the Biomule warehouse, and I was ravenous. By the time my watch said it was noon, lunchtime, I was ready to throw an entire pallet of stored goods at my coworkers in order to get to the break room first. After a grueling 5-minute fast-paced speed walk, I arrived. Cliff? I squinted at the tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, well-muscled giant of a man. The smug bastard knew the strength of his stride, and that my shorter legs simply couldn't compete with his. He was already eating a company-provided snack from the fridge, some green lime-flavored yogurt that always churned my insides from eating. Being lactose intolerant, I suppose that's just natural. "Hey there, Alex," cheerily replied Cliff, his eyes shining brightly, a glob of yogurt coating the inside of his mouth. I grunted and made my way to the refrigerator where the company stores their food goods, provided to employees free of charge. Opening the refrigerator, I see there's only one peanut butter sandwich left. Score. Our janitor Gerardo was usually responsible with restocking and disposing of expired food, but he hadn't been seen at work for a few weeks. So it was my lucky day to get the last one of these delicious commodities. Picking up the carton, I made note that the sandwich expired a few days ago. Our company has this strange policy about eating expired peanut butter sandwiches, which states that no employee shall ever consume any peanut butter sandwiches if the expiration date has been met. I always thought this was a stupid rule, as it should be common sense. Who wants to eat old food anyway? And why does this rule only apply to the peanut butter sandwiches? But this situation is a bit unique. The sandwich is only a few days past its date, and I'm quite terribly hungry. Plus, this has been refrigerated, thus extending its shelf life. What else could go wrong? I thought, my greedy hunger mangling my senses. "Got the last sandwich, huh? I've heard they're delicious," piped Cliff. "It's too bad you're allergic to peanuts, eh?" I smirked at him, shaking the carton victoriously in the air. Carton responds by lifting his yogurt-filled spork into his mouth, bobbing his head side to side, goading me. I don't know why anybody wants to eat that sugar-filled bacteria when they could eat the cream of the gods, peanut butter. "Enjoy the yogurt," I say flatly, sauntering out of the break room to enjoy my lunch away from prying eyes. I've never liked eating in front of people. It's always made me feel like a wild animal at a watering hole, constantly having to look over my shoulder, or have someone watch me eat, envious of my resources. I'm weird, I get that. I settled down in an unused, poorly lit service hallway that I claimed as my own. I even liberated a break room chair and placed it in the corner of the room some time ago. The space was a bit removed from our work area, as the warehouse was a large place, with many areas no longer in use due to disrepair or mismanagement. Something about the dim lighting, dark gray industrial-colored paint job, and the quiet of this hallway always helped me relax. I smiled down at my wonderful prize. The glorious nut-filled sandwich was but moments from being devoured. My hunger would know no restraint. I gingerly opened the carton to peer at my sandwich. It didn't look all that special. It was plain white bread without crust. The real treat was the perfectly creamy peanut butter in its center. Upon inspection of the sandwich, there appeared to be nothing wrong with it. It was perfect. Lifting it up to my nose, I expected the lightly sweet and salty smell that normally greets me with the company sandwiches. This is when I should have realized something was wrong. The sandwich smelled off. It still smelled sweet and salty, of course, but there was something different underneath that smell. It wasn't overpowering, nor was it strong enough to give my hunger pause. It almost smelled like mayonnaise that had been left in the sun for too long. I decided to give the sandwich an exploratory nibble. Tasted fine, if not a little stale, which I attributed to the sandwich being older. Satisfied that the sandwich wouldn't kill me, I devoured it quickly. After my meal, I promptly threw the carton down the old elevator shaft, which was always slightly ajar. Nobody used this elevator anymore, so it was my designated trash hole. After some time messing around on my phone, reading the latest Deify story on Reddit, and responding to some saucy direct messages, I headed back to my workstation. For a few hours, work was fine. I was fueled by my lunch and was extremely productive. That changed nearing the end of my shift. While lifting some product onto a transportable shelf, I felt my stomach gurgle, which I figured was just my body letting me know it was digesting my lunch at a hyperactive rate. Patting my stomach, I thought nothing of it and continued working. Mere moments later, I broke out into a cold sweat, and my stomach began twisting into knots. My stomach was sloshing around and audibly wailing at me. Fuck, I'm gonna need to go to the bathroom. I know the signs of nigh apocalyptic bowel movements, and I needed to move fast to avoid catastrophe. I logged out of my workstation and near sprinted down the hallways, my coworkers watching me go with mute curiosity. Upon reaching the restroom, I violently swing open one of the stall doors, lock it, and pull down the toilet seat. I didn't have time to bother covering the seat with anything, dire as my situation was. I plopped down quickly and let my insides erupt out of me. This wasn't a normal bowel movement. This was some act of a dark god, commandeering my digestive tract in order to bring mayhem to the world of men. My body began shivering and convulsing, racking from the concussive force of my anus. After what seemed like an eternity, all activity stopped. The stench smelled of rotting meat and curdled milk. I dared not look at what came out of me, so I cleaned up and flushed without looking at the disaster below. I was completely drained. Looking down at my watch, the time said it was 9:15 p.m. That couldn't be right. I had logged off of my station around 4:40 p.m., 20 minutes or so prior to the end of my shift. I know this had been a long session in the bathroom, but nearly 4 hours? That's impossible. I exited the restroom and started heading for the exit staircase at the far side of the warehouse. I always thought this place had a strange, creepy vibe during the day, but at night that feeling became outright oppressive. Only the backup safety lights remained on, giving the warehouse just enough light to see in. The sounds of machinery and working bodies were absent, striking a stark contrast between working hours and now. Every step echoed, every shadow danced in the corner of my vision. I want to say that I was brave, that I strode confidently alone in the darkened halls, but that would be a lie. I nearly ran down the hall, trying to remain quiet, but unable to tell if I was succeeding due to my heart racing. I felt like a wild animal alone in the dark, exposed. There was nothing to justify this feeling as far as I'd observed, but I couldn't help myself. Passing by my makeshift break room, down the derelict hallway, I felt a sudden urge to enter. Maybe because this was a place of comfort and I figured I'd be safe in my own space for a moment. I sat down on my musty old chair and took a few haggard breaths. My whole body felt like it was on fire, and I was sweating profusely. Just then, when my heart rate began to slow down, a noise began to come from the slightly opened elevator doors. It almost sounded like a voice, rhythmic and low, Human-like, but distorted. Wrong. I must be going crazy. After all these years being a warehouse drone, I've lost my mind. Curiosity getting the best of my judgment. I get out of my chair and peer into the dark and imposing elevator doors. Holding onto the doors for support, I lean slightly off the edge, looking down into the pit of my trash hole. Squinting in the dim light, I pull out my phone flashlight and direct the beam down into the breach. About 20 feet down, I make out the outline of the elevator floor. My flashlight is too dim at that range to get a clear picture, and only catch the glimmer of reflective plastics I dropped down over the years. Suddenly, there's motion in my peripheral coming from behind me to my left. I quickly turn around, shining my light in front of me. Looking around, I see nothing. Shaking my head, I began to brush it off as temporary insanity brought on by my bowel-induced coma. Hello, you. I look up abruptly at the ceiling following the sound. Silhouetted by the dim light, I see a pale, human-sized figure clinging to the ceiling. Piercing gray eyes reflected visibly in the light. Sputtering in shock, I take multiple panicked steps backwards, realizing too late that I had run out of floor and fell down into the elevator shaft. Pain racked my entire body. It felt like I had been hit by a truck, or, fell down 20 feet to the ground. The entire floor I'm laying on is covered in cardboard cartons. Far more than I could have ever thrown down here by myself. I morbidly think that it reminds me of a ball pit in a children's playhouse, but with fetid, rotting cartons. Strange, gurgling laughter echo from above and cascades into the chasm where I lay, filling my ears with a disturbing sound. Fall hard. Good. Stay there. Be right down. Must clean up the mess, says the strained voice, almost amused. Then that same low, rhythmic humming fills the gap of silence. Realizing the danger I was now in, I tried to dislodge myself from the thick layer of peanut butter sandwich cartons, my hands becoming slick, and a vile stench accompanying every movement. Looking up, I can see the outline of the creature moving along the walls, like some kind of twisted insect. Those are mine, the figure says, its voice looming ever closer. I have no idea what it means. But how can one gain reason from a beast, human as it may seem? Leave me alone, I shout to the being, garnering no response, just slow, heavy, and wet-sounding breathing. I scramble up and hurry to the elevator doors, which are closed. Digging my nails in between the slits, I try and pry the doors open with all of my strength, looking over my shoulder to measure the distance between me and the monster. Cannot leave. Must return. What is mine? The rasping voice is close now, no more than a few short feet away. The doors finally give, and I dash through as fast as I am able. Something slices the air next to my face, and I pump my legs even faster. As I take in my surroundings, I notice that this part of the warehouse is completely unfamiliar to me. It looks older, and in far worse condition than the rest of the facility. There is little to no lighting in this area, other than the occasional flickering industrial lights. I stop for a moment to catch my breath, lungs and body a mixture of burning and stabbing pain. My eyes paint the hall behind me, looking for any sign of the creature. Look, man, I'm just trying to leave, I shout into the darkness. Instead of a reply, the pale figure steps out of the shadows and into the dim, flickering light, lending me a full view of its twisted visage. It stood hunched over, pale skin and mottled flesh, with long, sparse hairs sprouting from its head. Its facial features were gaunt, gray, human-like eyes looking directly into mine. The cartilage of its nose had withered away, leaving only wet slits. The lips were gone, revealing brown, jagged teeth jutting out in every direction. The hands were long and slender, with dark claw-like fingernails extending well over a few inches. The legs were short and sinewy, and the feet were much like the hands, not flat or arched like a human's. "You will not leave here." The creature twitched at every word, almost as if the act of speaking were painful. "What the fuck are you?" I near scream. In response, the humanoid figure crouched low and began running at all fours in a sideways gait that was surprisingly nimble. Unable to pivot and run, I scanned around looking for a weapon. My eyes landed on a yellow tote, so I picked it up and threw it at the monster with as much force as I could muster. The tote made contact in the monster's midsection, causing it to stumble. Taking advantage of this temporary reprieve, I darted down the dark corridor, praying I was going in the right direction. I can hear the beast padding behind me as I go, but that tote I threw must have hurt, because the sounds were getting more and more distant. As I neared the end of the hallway, I was met with two large double doors. Kicking open the double doors, I dashed inside. The room revealed behind was huge, revealing ladders and platforms centered around massive industrial-sized vats, full of a light brown substance. Wanting to get to higher ground, I made my way towards a ladder, leading up to one of the large vats of mystery goo. Using the high ground to my advantage, I scanned the room for signs of the beast. Catching my breath and breathing through my nose, I picked up a pungent odor coming from the large vat to my right. Looking down at the boiling mass of fluids, I realized the smell is coming directly from here. I've never seen this product before. What the fuck is this? Thinking I've lost the pale monster for the moment, I bend down to get a closer look at the brown fluid churning slowly. Oddly enough, past the nasty smell, this stuff almost smells like peanut butter. Even worse, there appear to be tendril-like masses swirling around inside, almost as if they were alive. My observation of this mystery product was interrupted by an inhuman shriek coming from above me. As I jerked my head up to see, I was met with a pale blur, colliding with me and knocking me to the ground. Panicking, I started kicking with both legs as hard as I possibly could, trying to dislodge the freak monster off of me. It was grabbing and scraping against my legs, trying to gain purchase and get on top of me. I was able to land a solid kick in its face with my right foot, to which the monster bit the striking limb, tearing off my boot, snarling all the while. "Man, fuck you!" I scream, giving it another solid kick with my now bare foot, sending it tumbling into the boiling brown substance. Looking down at the creature as it slowly sinks into the large vat of unknown mixture, it shrieks in a way that no man nor beast could. I notice the pale, tendril-like beings in the vats begin to swarm over the beast, slowly pulling it below the surface, leaving nothing but a slow trickle of bubbles, and then nothing. Catching my breath, I climbed down the ladder, every movement causing pain. On the floor next to the vat that the creature perished within were boxes labeled white bread, and unfolded cardboard cartons labeled Biomule peanut butter crumbles. At this point, I couldn't put two and two together, and decided to just leave and deal with all of this later. Panting, I hold my limp left arm with my right hand and hobble my way out of the factory. This was no victory. This was just survival manifest. The thing that was once Gerardo was dead, and my brain was far too weary from the night's events as well as this feverish heat to comprehend all that had happened. It took everything in me to limp out of the warehouse and find my car. I have no idea how I was able to get home, and quite honestly, I don't even remember falling asleep in my bed. I was woken from a deep and painful sleep by my phone, blaring in my ear. At least I had the sense to plug it in. Looking towards my blinds, I could tell that it was morning, and the movements used in grabbing my phone revealed the pain I was in. My body felt even worse than before. My fever increased exponentially, and I could barely move on my aching limbs. Looking in the mirror, my face was extremely pale, and my eyes had a small yellow hue to them. I called my work to let them know what happened last night, but the line was dead. I texted one of my boss's cell phone numbers to let him know, but received no reply. Knowing it was too late after the fact, I also called our local law enforcement department about last night's events. Dispatch sounded like they didn't believe a word, but they promised to send officers over to talk to me, and then send someone over to the factory to investigate what had happened. I'm going to relax until the police arrive. My fever feels like it's only getting worse, and a small patch of my hair just fell out. I think I'll have to go to the hospital later as well. I'd like to end with this. If your company has a policy to never eat expired food, I strongly suggest you heed their warning, especially if your company is primarily a biotechnology company.